Now, most people are familiar with these elementals right here when we touch on various aspects of Egyptology. But folks have been biased, and so much misinterpretation has gone forward concerning who's who on the planet Earth, but especially vis-a-vis Egyptology. So we was doing this brief research here, and we came across some symbols here, right? Just once again, this is the original ancient Egyptian eye of whether Re or Kheri or Ra or Horus. And here we have the counterfeit one, right, of the Alex Crowley acolyte, so-called Western Gentile or white supremacist New World Order. Now, there it's as different as night and day. It's like when you jack something, you know, or it's like when something is perverted or stolen, like what has been done with so many things. Some of us talk about hip-hop, you know, or other musical forms from ancient black culture or ancient African culture, speaking generally. But what we want to do is specifically touch on a particular aspect, right, of ancient Egypt, right, and the symbology, because folks will say, oh, this is heathen, this is pagan. But if they are Bible believers or readers, the only way they're going to properly understand what's written in the Bible in its context. And we're not saying for salvation, because Almighty has already set forth his salvation in the Moshiach and in faith in his name, right? So that's according to each individual soul's ability to receive, right? But what we're speaking about is the truth right here concerning what Moses wrote in his 5 books, what Moses, our Torah giver, what he wrote in his 5 books. So let us go forward right here. As Moses lifted up the serpent, what? In the wilderness, the same serpent? See, we know about Moses. Most folks, when they think about the serpent, the Garden of Eden, it's all because of what Moses wrote in his first book, what Moses wrote in his first book concerning the serpent. Now we have this interesting matter here where it says that Moses, as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up. Now, Yeshua HaMoshiach, right, is making a likeness, the black Messiah, right, Yeshua, the Moshiach, the anointed, the King of Israel, in Revelation, the King of Kings of Ethiopia. This clear link is being made right here with the serpent. Now, the serpent, right, that's spoken of here is the Moshiach. How interesting is that? Well, what about the serpent in the garden? Now, based on what we've learned, right, in Sunday school or based on the movies and TV, we have to dispense with that, right, and have to just begin off and trust, but let's verify. Let's verify a few things. So Moses was learned in all the wisdom, right, of the Egyptians. So let's put Moses and wisdom right here. Now, wisdom, when we say wisdom, even today, most folks don't recognize that wisdom today is even technology. So we have a lot of technology. Even I'm using this technology right here, which some might call rightly the wisdom of the world, right? The computer, the internet, the cell phone, and YouTube's, all of that, right? So right here there are 3 verses, right, in Exodus 36, Exodus 36 and 2, Deuteronomy 34 and 9, and Acts 7 and 22. Let us read this. Let's read the first one. Exodus 36 and 2, which is Moses' second book, or Shemot, or Rit Ze'at Be'amarinya, and it reads, and Moses called Bezaleel and Aholiab, and every wise-hearted man in whose heart Yahweh had put wisdom, even everyone whose heart stirred him up to come to the work to do it. All right, to come, everyone whose heart, right, whose consciousness was stirred up in them to come forward to do the work, right, to do it, to the work to do it, right? So wisdom is very much connected, right? Now we have Deuteronomy 34:9, and Yehoshua, the son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands. Remember we were talking about the hand sign of blessing. Moses had laid his hands, right? That hand symbol, right? The sheen, the Shaddai sheen, had laid his hands, and the Samek as well, upon him. And the children of Israel hearkened, they shemad to him. They heard and they obeyed, and did as Yahweh commanded Moses. They did as Yahweh commanded Moses. Now, these are two Old Testament verses. Now let's touch on Moses and wisdom in the New. And here it says, and Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, and was mighty in words and in deed. So he could both speak it. Now we have his words, but then also we have the testimony of his deeds. Now, from our study of Haile Selassie, the Book of the Seven Seals, when it says Egyptians, it's not speaking of the people Egyptian, but it's actually speaking of the Egypts, right? The Egypts, right? There they falsely call the Egyptians Gentiles, but they're not Gentiles because they're not of the Isles. But anyway, so that it's actually Egypts, right, and not Egyptians in the Methaf Kedus, the Book of the Seven Seals. Now people say, well, why does that make a big difference, right? Whether it is speaking of the people or of Egypt. Well, first of all, because there's more than one particular Egypt. Now, I just want to prove right here that this genealogy is the Egyptian version, or we could say the original, some would say, and it was prior to, because it clearly says in the scriptures that Moses was learned in all the wisdom of the Egypt. So Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Lower Egypt was where he was at, and when he went, his Ethiopian father-in-law, we know that Ethiopia, Tobiah's direction of Upper Egypt. So therefore this verse can be verified by evidence. So he was learned, he was initiated into the wisdom. That means that what he writes to us in his in the 5 books, especially in his first book, right? So we got to look at his first book. See, because if we don't understand and comprehend the beginning, then how should we understand what does he mean right here? As Moses lifted up the serpent. Which serpent? Why did he have to lift up the serpent? What was going on there? And it was Yahweh who had sent fiery serpents to bite the people who murmured against the authority of Moses. All right? So when we look into Genesis, all right? When we look into Genesis chapter, let's take 1, 2, and 3, right? Something very interesting. All the way, say, take it up to the first 5 chapters, right? This genealogy right here can be matched almost exactly, right, with what we have in Moses' first book. Now, the Ra right there is array. We tried to touch on array in the previous portion, and this is why we even showed this, which we'll show once again. This is the true symbol. See, they want to make you think that the eye is the eye of Ra, so forth and so on, but the true symbol of, this is the true symbol of array right here. And the proper pronunciation is array, because arai and array. Array contracted, and arai mean to see, vision. We have it in the scripture. We have Hagar calling Yahweh El Shaddai, right, calling him El Aroi, the one who sees. We also have Abraham in the sacrifice, right, in that scene with Yitzhak, right, saying when his son asks, well, where is the lamb? The father, Abraham, he says that Yahweh will provide, right? Yahweh Jireh, Jireh. So we have within this word, Array, Hebraically, it both means to see, right, and vision, to see in the sense of vision. Before they were prophets, they were called those who had vision, Bale Arai. And then it also means to shepherd. So we have this motif of the Lord is my shepherd, right? Or Yahweh is the shepherd. All right, so this is now linked. We want to link Ra right here with Elohim, right? With Elohim in the Genesis first sense. Now, what's interesting, so let us make man in our image and after our likeness. Now, here we have Shu and Tefnut, male and female. He created them, Shu and Tefnut, Genesis 1 and 26. Right? Then we have on the first day of the week, which was the Ehud, or what's called Sunday in the Western Gentile sense, we have Adam, right? We have Adam, but then Adam, right? He didn't have a helpmate. So we have Geb, who was Geb also. He's the one laying on his back. You probably can't see this right here, and she's arching over him, right? This also matches when we're gonna get into the details, some almost verse by verse details, and then it'll become even much more clear. You understand? Proving what we're saying to be right and exact. So this would be Adam and Eve, right, in Genesis chapter 2. Now this is very interesting down here, because what do we have down here? We have Osiris, right, or Osar, right? We have Oset, right? We have Seth or Shet, right? And then we have Neptis. Interesting that we have Neptis. Right, now why is that of interest? Because we have two family lines here, but then who would see? Most people think that, well, Adam was Osiris. Really, it makes more sense when we look at it mosaically from Moses' perspective, that the Osiris, right? Osiris is the one named Abel, right? And that Seth, right, or Sutan, where we get Satan or Shaitan, Shet, right, the children of Shet, right, would be Seth here, Egyptian Seth, or Cain, right, of Cain and Cain. Now, the reason why, when we study within some of the Ethiopic and Judaic and even some of the Islamic sources, but chiefly for us, the Kibrat Neges, right, the Queen of Sheba and her son Menelik, from our own Ethiopic Timharit teaching or Talmud, right, the Ethiopic, that is, we have jealousy, the enmity of Satan, of Diablos, was cast into Cain. Remember, it says that ye are of your father, the devil. This is what the Moshiach said. That ye, when he was speaking to the Pharisees and those religionists. See, now the religionists don't like this. All the religious folks, because they claim to have the copyright already on the biblical interpretation. This is why, for ones to have the Bible in so many bygone ages, the religionists, right, we could say the priestcraft, you understand, who sought to be an intermediary between God and man. This is what Yeshua, what the Moshiach abolished. They didn't want the people to have that access, that direct communication. It's Yeshua that broke down that middle wall. But yet, was this a prophecy? Some say, well, when we look at ancient Egypt, we see a primitive Christianity. And this is true, but what is the interpretation? You see, there's a lot of funny, strange interpretations out there. It's almost like the Bible. The Bible is the Word of God, the Word of truth. But when misinterpreted, the Bible has been used to enslave, has been used to do all ungodly sort of evils, because Satan transforms himself to be a minister of righteousness, a minister of light, right? And this now is touching on another aspect, but